My sister betrayed me and fired me from the company I helped build for 25 years. The performance reports looked wrong the moment Elena handed them to me across the conference table. Numbers that didn't match my memory, projects attributed to other people, failures that seemed exaggerated beyond recognition. My name is Connor Blake, 42 years old, and I'd spent 25 years building Blake Construction and Development alongside my father Vincent and my sister Elena. What started as a small residential contractor had grown into a multi-million-dollar commercial development firm, and I'd been there every step of the way. But sitting in that sterile conference room with Elena on one side, Margaret Sullivan from HR on the other, and my father at the head of the table avoiding eye contact, I realized this wasn't about my performance at all. This was an execution. Connor, your performance metrics have been declining consistently for the past 3 years, Elena said, her voice steady and professional. She'd always been the better speaker between us. While I focused on operations and project management, she handled marketing and client relations. I flipped through the report, my confusion growing with each page. The West Side Medical Center project was listed as a failure under my supervision, even though it had come in 15% under budget and 2 weeks early. The Morrison office complex showed cost overruns that I knew hadn't happened. The residential development in Oakwood was marked as delayed when we'd actually finished ahead of schedule. These numbers are wrong, I said, looking up at Elena. This isn't accurate data. She exchanged a glance with our father. Connor, I understand this is difficult to accept, but the metrics speak for themselves. The West Side project was a success. You were there at the completion ceremony. There were behind-the-scenes issues you weren't aware of, Elena replied smoothly. Client complaints, subcontractor problems. The final numbers tell a different story. I turned to my father, the man who'd taught me everything about construction, who'd brought me on job sites when I was 12 years old, who trusted me with million-dollar projects. Dad, you know this isn't accurate. Vincent finally met my eyes, and I saw something there I'd never seen before. Resignation mixed with what looked like pain. Connor, Elena has been tracking these metrics for months. The board has reviewed everything. The decision is final. What board? I asked. It's a family company. We don't have an outside board. We've brought in advisors, Elena said. Business consultants who've helped us analyze our efficiency metrics. The recommendation was unanimous. Margaret slid a severance package across the table. 2 months' salary plus accrued vacation time. We'll provide positive references for future employment opportunities. I stared at the papers, trying to process what was happening. 25 years of my life reduced to a severance check and a manipulated performance review. I need time to think about this. Actually, Elena said, we need you to clean out your office today. Security protocols for departing employees. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a sudden decision based on performance issues. This was planned, calculated, orchestrated. They'd been preparing for this moment for months. I packed my personal items in silence while Elena supervised from the doorway. 25 years of memories fit into 2 cardboard boxes. Family photos, the antique level my grandfather had given me, certificates from safety training courses, the small cactus that had somehow survived a decade under fluorescent lights. As I cleared out my desk drawers, my fingers found something unexpected wedged behind the back panel. A manila folder, old and worn, labeled Performance Reviews, Confidential. I glanced at Elena, who was checking her phone, and quickly slipped the folder under some papers in my box. The drive home felt surreal. I'd taken this route for 25 years, usually thinking about project schedules or material deliveries. Now I was thinking about unemployment benefits and job applications at 42 years old. At home, I set the boxes in my garage and pulled out the mystery folder. Inside were handwritten notes in my father's careful script, performance evaluations going back 15 years. But these weren't the sanitized reports I'd just seen. These were honest assessments, detailed observations, yearly summaries that painted a completely different picture. Connor continues to exceed expectations in project management. His attention to detail saved us $340,000 on the Henderson project alone. That was from last year. Connor's leadership during the Riverside crisis was exemplary. Without his quick thinking, we would have faced lawsuits and significant financial losses. From 2 years ago, Elena has expressed concerns about Connor's decision-making, but I disagree. His conservative approach to bidding has kept us profitable while competitors struggled. From 3 years ago, I kept reading, growing more confused with each page. According to my father's real evaluations, I was a model employee, a valuable asset, someone who had consistently contributed to the company's success. The reports Elena had shown me were complete fabrications. My phone buzzed. A text from my wife, Sarah. How did the meeting go? I hadn't told her what the meeting was really about. She thought it was a promotion discussion. I stared at the message, then set the phone down without responding. How do you tell someone your entire career has been ended by your own family? That evening, as I sat on my back porch trying to make sense of everything, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Warren and Associates, my father's law firm. Connor? This is Frederick Warren. I was your father's attorney. I need to speak with you urgently. About what? About your termination from Blake Construction. And about your father's will. There are things you need to know, things that weren't discussed in today's meeting. I felt my stomach tighten. What kind of things? Not over the phone. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? Say 9 a.m. My father died 3 years ago. Why are we talking about his will now? Frederick paused. Connor, there are provisions in your father's will that your sister apparently hasn't shared with you. Provisions that specifically address what would happen if you were ever terminated from the company. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean? Your father was very specific about protecting your interests. He anticipated that family dynamics might change after his death. He built in safeguards. After hanging up, I sat in the growing darkness, questions multiplying in my mind. Elena had been systematically undermining me for months, maybe years. The performance reports were fabricated, and now there were mysterious provisions in my father's will that she'd hidden from me. Frederick Warren's office occupied the top floor of a downtown building that Blake Construction had renovated 5 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat across from the elderly attorney who had handled my family's legal affairs for over 30 years. Your father was a careful man, Frederick began, opening a thick file. He understood that family businesses can be complicated after the founder's death. He also understood your sister's ambitions. He handed me a document. This is the real version of your father's will, not the simplified version that was read at the funeral. I scanned the pages, legal language swimming before my eyes. I don't understand most of this. Let me explain the relevant sections. Your father left Elena controlling interest in Blake Construction, but with specific conditions. If you were ever terminated without cause, if your employment was ended for reasons that could be disputed, ownership would immediately transfer to a trust. What kind of trust? One that you control. Your father suspected that Elena might try to push you out once she had voting control. He built in this protection specifically to prevent that. I felt my heart racing. So, if Elena fired me illegally, she would lose the company. But here's the crucial part. Your termination had to be documented as wrongful or fraudulent for the provision to activate. Your father needed proof that any dismissal was unjustified. I thought about the fake performance reports, the manipulated data. I have that proof. Frederick leaned forward. What kind of proof? I told him about the real performance evaluations I'd found, the discrepancies in the reports Elena had presented. Frederick took careful notes as I spoke. Connor, this is exactly what your father anticipated. He even left instructions for me to investigate any termination to verify its legitimacy. Why didn't you contact me sooner? Elena told me you left voluntarily to pursue other opportunities. She said it was amicable, that you were planning to start your own firm. I only learned about the termination yesterday when I ran into Margaret Sullivan at lunch. The pieces were falling into place. Elena hadn't just fired me. She'd lied to the family attorney to prevent the will provisions from activating. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd documented her fraud in those performance reports. Frederick continued reading from the file. There's more. Your father also established a separate account, what he called an insurance policy. If the ownership transfer provision was ever triggered, you would have immediate access to $2.8 million in operating capital. $2.8 million. He wanted to ensure you could continue the business properly if Elena proved unfit to run it. He also suspected she might try to drain company assets if she knew she was losing control. I sat back in the leather chair, overwhelmed. What happens now? Now, we need to formally document the fraudulent termination. I'll need copies of those real performance evaluations, any other evidence you have. Then, I'll contact Elena's attorney and inform them that the ownership provisions are being activated. She's not going to take this well. Frederick smiled grimly. Your father anticipated that too. He included a clause preventing any family member from challenging the ownership transfer if it's based on documented misconduct. Elena can fight it, but she won't win. As I drove home, my phone started buzzing with calls from Elena. I let them go to voicemail. Whatever she wanted to say could wait until I was ready to hear it. That afternoon, I made copies of all the documents Frederick had requested. The real performance reviews, the fraudulent reports Elena had presented, even the original job descriptions that showed my actual responsibilities. Everything painted a clear picture of systematic manipulation designed to justify an illegal termination. By evening, Elena had left 12 voicemails. I finally listened to them in chronological order, watching her tone evolve from confusion to anger to something approaching panic. Connor, call me back. There's been a misunderstanding. Connor, I don't know what you think you're doing, but we need to talk. Connor, Frederick Warren called. This is insane. You can't seriously think you can steal the company. Connor, pick up the damn phone. We built this business together. Don't destroy it over hurt feelings. The last message was different, quieter. Connor, Please, can we just talk? Families should be able to work things out. I deleted all 12 messages and went to bed early. Tomorrow would be a very interesting day. The ownership transfer happened faster than I expected. Frederick had filed the necessary paperwork by noon, and by 3 p.m., I was officially the controlling owner of Blake Construction and Development. Elena's lawyer had tried to challenge the documents, but Vincent's will was ironclad. I drove to the office that afternoon, using the key card that Margaret had forgotten to deactivate. The building was mostly empty. Elena had apparently sent everyone home early after receiving the legal notice. I found her in what used to be our father's office, staring out the window at the construction site across the street. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Congratulations," she said without turning around. "You got what you always wanted." "I never wanted to take the company from you, Elena. I just wanted to do my job." She turned to face me, and I saw that she'd been crying. "My job? Connor, you never understood. Dad always favored you. The son who could carry on the Blake name, the son who understood construction. I had to fight for every scrap of recognition." "That's not true." "Isn't it? When clients called, they asked for you. When contractors had problems, they wanted Connor Blake. I was just the marketing person, the pretty face who handled the easy stuff." I sat down across from her. "You were the one who built our client relationships. You're the reason we grew from residential to commercial development. But it was never enough." Elena's voice was bitter. "Even when Dad made me managing partner, everyone knew you were the real leader. I thought if I could prove you weren't indispensable, if I could show that the company could run without you, you sabotaged me. I protected the company. Your conservative approach was holding us back. We could have been twice as large if you hadn't been so afraid to take risks. I pulled out copies of the real performance evaluations. These are Dad's actual assessments of my work. He thought my conservative approach saved the company money." Elena glanced at the papers, but didn't take them. Dad was old school. He didn't understand modern business practices. "Modern business practices like fraud?" She flinched. "I didn't commit fraud. I interpreted data differently. You fabricated reports. I highlighted problem areas that you ignored." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Elena asked, "What happens now? Are you going to fire me?" I'd been thinking about that question since yesterday. "I don't know. Frederick says Dad's will gives me complete control, but it also says the company should stay in the family if possible." "So I could stay?" "If you could accept that I'm in charge now. If you could work with me instead of against me." Elena looked out the window again. "I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can work for my little brother. Then I'll buy out your remaining share. You can start your own firm, take some of our clients who prefer working with you. We don't have to be enemies." She nodded slowly. That might be better. For both of us. 3 months later, Elena had started her own marketing and development consultancy. She took Margaret with her in 3 of our commercial accounts. It was amicable, professional, and probably inevitable. I hired Tom Rodriguez as my new operations manager, promoted Jennifer Chen to head of client relations, and brought in a team of young engineers who were eager to learn. The company's culture shifted from competitive to collaborative. The West Side Medical Center project, the one Elena had labeled a failure, won a Regional Excellence Award 6 months later. The Morrison office complex was featured in Commercial Construction magazine. The Oakwood residential development sold out 2 months ahead of schedule. Vincent's insurance policy money allowed us to take on larger projects, bid more competitively, and invest in new equipment. Blake Construction and Development grew by 40% in its first year under my leadership. Sometimes I wondered if this was what my father had planned all along. Maybe he knew Elena and I would eventually need to go our separate ways. Maybe he understood that we were better apart than together. Elena sent me a card when we won our first major contract after the transition. "Congratulations," it read. "Dad would be proud." She was right. He would be proud that we'd found a way to honor both his legacy and our individual strengths. He'd built more than a construction company. He'd built a foundation for his children to succeed, separately if necessary. I kept his picture on my desk, right next to the antique level my grandfather had given me. 2 generations of Blake builders, each one learning that the strongest foundations require patience, planning, and the wisdom to know when it's time to build something new. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who know us best. Elena understood exactly how to wound me, but she underestimated my father's wisdom and my own resilience. In the end, his protective love was stronger than her betrayal. Would you forgive your sibling, or would you fight for what's yours?